tomato ketchup, brown sauce? No, not those kind of sauces. Today we're talking about sources of business finance. So Heinz will not be getting a mention here, honey. You can't put this sauce on your chips. We are diving into sources of business finance in this GCSE Business revision episode. I am Jono from Seneca. Let's go. We're starting with short-term methods and short-term methods of financing. And sources of finance include banks, investors, or suppliers, and these are ways businesses can raise money to fund their operations and growth. Methods of finances are the way that a source can offer finance. So what are these short-term methods of finance? We can have trade credit. Trade credit describes when firms pay suppliers at a later date. It involves buying something now and paying for it later. Hire purchase. This is when a business buys something and instead of paying for it up front, it pays for it in installments. So when PSG bought Kylian Mbappe from Monaco, they didn't pay the whole amount at the time and instead completed the purchase in different stages. If a company bought machinery worth £1,000, a hire purchase scheme may allow them to pay £100 a month for 10 months rather than pay the 1k up front. What are some other short-term methods, I hear you ask? Another one is an overdraft, which you'll become very familiar with in your student years. This is when a bank lets a business spend more money than the amount of cash that they have in their current account. And when you're a student, you get an interest-free one, so live it the dream. So 3 short-term methods of finance. Hit me. What are they? Hire purchases, trade credit, and an overdraft. That's hire purchases, trade credit, and an overdraft. Okay, so we've been taking it short, but we want some long-term goals. We want some longevity in our business. So how can we get some long-term methods of finance? Well, businesses can use the capital, money, to initially start up, to fund new investments or for growth, or to support a business if it's struggling. Some long-term methods of financing are retained profit. This is the profit that the business has effectively saved while it has been operating. Retained profit is a cheap source of finance because a business does not have to pay any interest. Retained profit is limited though, so a business can only spend profits that have been saved. It may not be enough to fund large, long-term projects. Share capital. A firm can sell share capital, some of its shares, to other people or companies. They give away a percentage of the company in return for getting finance invested in the business. This is usually what happens on Dragon's Den on the BBC. Honey, the drama can be real sometimes. Public limited companies may do new share issues, creating shares and issuing them to investors through a stock market. Private limited companies can sell share capital shares to family, friends, or even a private equity company. Crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is often done on the internet. It involves encouraging investors, usually individuals, to put small amounts of money into a specific business or venture. The Oculus VR headset was initially crowdfunded by individuals who pledged $2.4 million in 30 days. Damn. Bank loans or mortgages. Bank loans and mortgages are very, very important for many businesses. A business borrows money from a bank and then pays interest on the money borrowed. It is often harder for new businesses to get bank loans because banks see them as riskier. Personal savings. This is personal money that is invested by the owner of a company. It is more relevant for startup companies in which the entrepreneur has saved up to fund his business venture. A downside is it can be really risky for an entrepreneur to put a significant amount of dollar into a business. Venture capital. In venture capital, experienced business people with access to large amounts of capital offer investments to a portion of a company in return. So they give you some money for a bit of your company in return. A downside to this is that the entrepreneur may lose some control of the business decisions. So that's venture capital. So what are 6 long-term methods of finance? We have share capital, retained profit, personal savings, venture capital, crowdfunding, bank loans, or mortgages. So what happens in venture capital? Do you remember? So in venture capital, experienced business people with access to large amounts of capital offer investment for a portion of the company in return. So it might be like, yo, I'm super experienced. I know my stuff. I'm going to give you like 100 quid, but I want 10% of your company. And a downside, do you remember the downside of venture capital? So the entrepreneur could lose a little bit of control of their company. Let's go and let's review an earlier example. When PSG bought Kylian Mbappe from Monaco, they chose to complete the purchase in multiple stages. What's that an example of? Is it an overdraft? Trade credit? Nah, honey, that is a hire purchase. A hire purchase. So, I believe that brings us to the end of this episode talking about sources of business financing. I hope it was a useful one and you are up to speed on how you're going to fund your new business, whatever it may be, or how to answer questions on the exam, which might be a more short-term goal. Who knows? Thank you for joining me. Good luck with your studying. Well done for being proactive in your work and taking the time to listen to this episode. Really well done. And I look forward to joining you on the next episode.